All right, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna finish the examples that we skipped on Friday, and then I'll add one. So this was law of cosines, which is used to find the missing sides and angles when you're given side, 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 and side, angle, side. So they're gonna get looped in together on your quiz. It will literally just say solve the triangle. You're gonna have to look at the information that's given. In my opinion, because law of sines to me is like the most obvious. It's either all three sides or it's side, angle, side, which is one of each letter, two being sides. Those are when you're going to use law of cosines, and then the other times are when you're going to use law of sines. The formulas for law of cosines were here. We said the standard form is used to find a side, and this would be if you're doing side, angle, side. And then the alternate form is used to find an angle if you're given side, side, side. The last step on all of these is there's one more step because we have to square root either that whole side to get rid of the square that's on the square. And then on the bottom, we have to cosine -1 this whole thing. We also talked about the importance of how you type that in the calculator for the bottom. If you're not using the actual parenthesis, or if you're not using the actual fraction, you have to make sure you group together your numerator and your denominator so that it knows to go against the order of operations, which would normally take that last thing in the top and divide it by 2 first. So you want to make sure after you square them, but you want to make sure you group them, or you want to make sure you use your little fraction tool, that shortcut. We said with the angles, like when you're trying to find the angles, that you have an option, and that is to do the first one using law of cosines and then switch to law of sines. But if you do that, you have to start with the largest angle first. My recommendation to you was, though, just stick with law of cosines. It will be more accurate because it will use the values that were given to you instead of something that you found, and order doesn't matter then. We're going to come back to these examples. All right, so we didn't do example 3. This was it. It says solve the triangle and round to the nearest hundredth. So I'm given A. Oh, that should be side A. This should be A, lowercase. A is 6 centimeters, B is 8 centimeters, and C is 12 centimeters. So this is a side, side, side scenario. So if I stick to law of cosines, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to switch, you need to make sure you do the largest first. So I tend to just do that out of habit. I'm going to find C first. So the cosine of C would equal A squared plus B squared minus C squared over 2AB. And I'm going to do cosine -1 of 6 squared plus 8 squared minus 12 squared over 2 times 6 times 8. And I do that whole thing in the calculator, making sure I'm in degrees, because once we reset it, like what you'll have to do for your quiz, you'll have to reset it. It puts it back into radians. 6 squared plus 8 squared minus 12 squared divided by 2 times 6 times 8. And I get angle C is 117.28 degrees. Because if you're going to switch to law of sines, you have to do the largest one first. If you keep it law of cosines, it won't matter. But if you switch, you got to do it first. So I just do it like literally out of habit. I just do that one first. Then it doesn't matter where I move again. If I stick with law of cosines, let's say I want to do A first. Cosine of A would be B squared plus C squared minus A squared over 2BC. And I get cosine -1 of B squared, which is 8 squared, C squared 12 squared minus A squared 6 squared over 2 times 8 times 12. 8 squared plus 12 squared minus 6 squared divided by 2 times 8 times 12. And I get angle A is 26.38 degrees. And then angle B is the last one. And you could find it a couple different ways. One, do 180 minus the other two. So 180 minus 117.28 minus 26.38. And that's 36.34. That's the fastest way. If we wanted to check it, I could also do cosine B. Cosine B equals A squared plus C squared minus B squared over 2AC. So cosine -1 of A, which is 6 squared, plus C, 12 squared, minus B, 8 squared over 2, 6, 12. And I get angle B 36.36336, which is 36.34. Same answer. You might get something that's like 100th off. If you keep it exact, that's okay. Like obviously when I do the key on these quizzes, I know that there's more than one way to do them. On Monday. All right, example 4. This time you're given angle A, side B, and side C. So we are given side, angle, side. I know this because it's 2 sides and the other letter, which means that would be where they meet. If you need to see it drawn out, then do that. So A would be 80 degrees, side B is 16, and side C is 12. So side, angle, side, or 2 sides and the angle where they meet. So the first thing I have to do here is find that last side. I have to find A. A squared would equal B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine A. So I end up with the square root of 16 squared plus 12 squared minus 2 times 16 times 12 times the cosine of 80. And then you can type it in exactly like that in the calculator. And I get A is 18.26. All right, so now I need to find the other 2 angles. I can switch to law of sines here, or I can keep going with law of cosines. So if I did law of cosines and I wanted to find angle B, it would be cosine of B equals A squared plus C squared minus B squared over 2AC. And I get 18.26 squared plus C, which is 12 squared, minus B, which is 16 squared, over 2 times 18.26 times C, which is 12. And I'm going to cosine -1 that whole thing. So I get angle B is 59.65 degrees. Now, if I were to switch and use law of sines there, the full ratio I have is A. So it would be A over sine of A would equal B, which is 16, over sine of B. And then I can cross multiply. And I would divide. So 16 sine of 80 divided by 18.26. And I get like 0.8629, so on and so forth. I'm going to sine -1, that whole thing. And I get angle B, 59.646. So both ways, same answer, okay? You can switch if you want. Both ways are using a rounded value that you found, so it's not like one way is better than the other. Sophia? What? On the right? Law of sines.
Why is there like a 16 and 18? I think I missed something because I was doing that.
This is law of sines. So this. Cross multiplied and then divided. So cross multiplied, I got this statement. And then to isolate the sine of B, I have to divide both sides by 18.26. Okay, then the last angle would be angle C, and I would do 180 minus the 80 given from A minus the 59.65 I just found. And I get 40.35. So I found A, 18.26. I found angle B, 59.65 degrees. And I found angle C, 40.35 degrees. Make sure you distinguish the difference between your letters. Obviously, C kind of looks the same, whether it's capital or lowercase, and some of you tend to make B's lowercase in both. You need to make sure if it's the angle, you're putting the angle in the front and giving it the degree symbol, and if it's the side, obviously not those two things. So each of these questions on your quiz, which there are 4, there's one of each of the different methods, you're going to end up solving for all the missing sides and all the missing angles. So they should either have 3 answers, or if they're the double triangle ones, they end up with 6 answers. Questions on that one. So we did side, 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 God bless you. Side, 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 law of cosines, and then side, angle, side, law of cosines. And then the last thing that we did on Friday was Heron's area formula. So you're going to have 2 formulas or 2 questions on area because there's 2 methods to finding it. The first didn't have a name. It's just the area of an oblique triangle. And the second is called Heron's area formula. So the one in the law of sines section is if you're given side, angle, side, and Heron's would be if you were giving side, side, side. So I have all 3 side lengths. I'm going to add them all together, divide by 2, not round. And then I plug it into here. Square root of S times S minus A times S minus B times S minus C. All right, so here's an example I just added so we can practice. It would be example 6. A is 7.5, B is 6.3, and C is 8.2. We're going to round to nearest 10th. So first thing I want to find is S. This would be 7.5 plus 6.3 plus 8.2 divided by 2. Which is 11. If it had a decimal, I would keep it. Remember, you're not rounding it. And then I would do the square root of 11 times 11 minus 7.5 times 11 minus 6.3 times 11 minus 8.2. $22.509. So 22.5, if it had a unit, it would be units squared. Yep.
There's nothing on months.
Sorry?
There's nothing on months.
Oh, I wonder. All right, so first of all, again, these are going to get looped in together. So if you want to look at what you're given here, A, B, C, this would be angle 43.5. Opposite side would be 7.6, and opposite that B is 8.2. So you're given one angle and 2 sides, and it's not the included angle. This is your side angle scenario, which means there could be an ambiguous case here. So there could be 1 triangle, there could be no triangle, or there could be 2 triangles. I go into it assuming that there are 2. So I would make a note, like, and on your quiz, it's not going to give you 6 blanks. You're going to have to know to duplicate your blanks. Like it's going to, so I'm going to look for angle B, 1, angle C, 1, and side C1. And then I'm going to assume that there are duplicates for B, 2, C2, and side C2 until I prove myself wrong. So the first thing, hopefully you notice, is that this would be law of sines, and the full complete ratio is the A's. The A applies to both. All the original information is going to apply to both triangles. So I can do 7.6 over the sine of 43.5 equals, the other thing I have is side B. So B, which would be 8.2, over the sine of angle B1. Then we cross multiply. So 8.2 times the sine of 43.5 equals 7.6 times the sine of B1. And then I'm going to divide by that 7.6. So 8.2 sine 43.5 divided by 7.6, and I get 0.742698, so on and so forth. I'm going to sine -1 that exact answer. So without rounding it, I just do sine -1 and answer. And I get angle B1 is 47.96 degrees. Now I'm going to continue with triangle 1, but so that I don't forget, I'm also going to make a note over here that B2 would be 180 minus that. So 180 minus 47.96 means B2 would be 132.04 degrees. God bless you. God bless you. You're welcome. Now I'm going to continue again with triangle 1. So I found B1, angle C1 would be 180 minus the A that was originally given to me, minus the B1. So 180 minus 43.5 minus 47.96. So third angle in the first triangle is 88.54 degrees. And then the last side in the first triangle, I would still use the A's that were originally given to me because those are 100% accurate, not rounded. Sine of 7.6 or 7.6 over the sine of 43.5 would equal side B1 over the sine of 88.54. Cross multiply. And divide. All right, now I have to finish out that second triangle. So I ignored the information I found from the first triangle. This only applies to the first triangle. But the information I got from the question, these three pieces of information are still true. So if I want to find angle C2, I can do 180 minus angle A, which is 43.5, minus the B2 I found by finding the complement to B1. I mean supplement, sorry. So 132.04. So 180 minus 43.5 minus 132.04. It is 4.6. So that is 4.46. That's small, but it's positive. If that value was negative, I would know to stop. There'd only be one triangle. But because it's positive, that means I'm going to continue on and find the remaining measurement from triangle 2, which is side C2. I still use the A's given to me at the beginning. So 7.6 over the sine of 43.5 equals side C2 over the sine of angle C2, which is 4.46. And then I cross multiply. And divide. And C2 is 7.6 times the sine of 4.46 divided by the sine of 43.5, or 0.86. So small side, but it makes sense because it's opposite a really small angle. Like 4 degrees is pretty small. So it makes sense that something would be small opposite it. Ava.
To find C2, why can't you just do like the A minus the B squared? Because you said it like stays the same.
The A minus the B squared. You mean like set up another ratio?
Yeah.
You can. You could do.
You know how you found B2, which was the complement of the other one?
Yeah.
Why can't you just do the complement?
The supplement, you mean? It's the supplement. It doesn't work that way because it's 3 angles.
Okay, so you can only do that for one of them?
You can only do it for the first one.
Okay.
Yep.
How do you know if it's the first one?
The first one you find. Like B1 is the first one I found. Yep. If I found C1 first, then I would go and make C2 180 minus C1. So it's whatever the first one is you find.
And for angle C2, where did you get 132.04?
That's B2. So I took away A, which was given, and then B2, which I found. You're welcome. All right, the assignment should be there. Okay, I'm going to give you the last 20 minutes so you can work on that law of sines or law of cosines assignment if you haven't started it yet. If you have started it yet, hopefully you can finish it.